We have a short notice debut and an absolute banger at lightweight coming up this weekend. It is Jose Chepe Machine Gun Mariscal making that walk on 10 days notice, replacing Victor Martinez, taking on everybody's favorite standing hammer fist vet. It's Trevor Peek. And Matt, when we're talking about it, Peek is going to have a lot of fans in attendance. I listened to an interview that he did with John Eric Polai over with My MMA News, and he said he's going to have about 200 people there cheering him on in Jacksonville. And if you look at it for Peek, he's an Alabama guy, but he trains in that Chattanooga, northern Georgia area. So for everybody to make the move over to Jacksonville, it's not that far geographically. But when you look at a guy like Peek, I mean, coming into Dana White's Contender Series last year, you weren't really sure what to expect. No. He was coming off a big win over Kama Worthy. All of his wins were by knockout, and they still are. So he goes in there and he takes on Malik Lewis. And he was a nail for 5 minutes. He got beat up by Malik Lewis, but he rallied back in the last 30 seconds or so, and you saw that tide shift in the second round. He goes out there, gets a win over Lewis, and how do you not sign a guy like Peek? So then Peek parlays that forward, takes on Eric Gonzalez his last time out, and absolutely unloads. Now, Peek had a ton of success in the first minute. Then Gonzalez starts to wrestle him and had some success. Exactly. Gonzalez was able to land some right hands when they were on the feet, but it really was a combination of the knees and those big time, like I said, hammer fists that Peek was throwing that were able to get him the win. So Peek went from a situation where, and he said in an interview that he did with Alex Behunin, that he was working 2 jobs looking for a third, to all of a sudden that $50K performance bonus in his last time out. Now he's training full time, and you love to see that for a guy like Trevor Peek. And if you do a YouTube search on him, you know how crazy his life story is. He's absolutely turned it around, and he has found the good book. So if you look at it for Peek, coming into a matchup like this against Mariscal, who has fought some of your favorite fighters, beaten some of them.
Insane level of competition.
Lost to some of them. The thing for Mariscal is he's going to give a tough fight to a guy fighting in a bar to a top 15 contender. He fights the same way every single time.
I felt terrible for him when I was watching that Joe Anderson-Brito fight.
And I'm going to make a couple of examples, but his fight against Jose Mariscal, who the nickname in that fight was Chepe. In that fight, you look at the referee, and he stood absolutely no chance. But if your name is Curtis Thunder, you'd think, hey, Curtis, you're going to stand a chance. So what happens? Brito goes out there, and before the fight even starts, they go into the middle, and they're jawing as the ring announcer is announcing Joe Anderson-Brito. He's standing in there trash talking. English is not his first language, and he's absolutely going at it.
That life.
So Mr. Thunder does his thing, splits them up. They start to fight. Joe Anderson rushes in there, and when I watch him fight, it's either, is this guy going to glove tap, or is he going to be like a dick on UFC 4, and are we going spinning wheel kick and Craig gets knocked out? Well, it could be either or, but in that one, they're jawing. Joe Anderson kicks him in the cup. His opponent goes to grab his cup. Mr. Thunder goes, all right, stop. And Joe Anderson goes, bang, bang, and knocks him and wobbles him. And then the fight starts back up. Joe Anderson goes in there, throws bombs, goes body kick, right hook, left hook, knocks him dead. So, again, I am very hyped up on Joe Anderson-Brito.
It's a tough performance. You know, and for Mariscal, here's the one thing I will say about him, and let's just give full respect to both these guys. I'm really excited for this fight. I think this could be a fight of the night by the time it's over. I don't think the winner of this is getting into the top 15, though, if I'm being completely honest, because for Mariscal, he has a great right hand. He can throw it from any position, really. He throws it hooks, he throws it straight. You know what the problem is, though? He doesn't set it up all that well, and he will overextend with that one big power shot quite a bit. And that's something I do worry about when he fights guys. Maybe Trevor Peek, with his sort of unorthodox style, might not be the guy to catch him, but Mariscal leaves that opening in every single one of his fights, and a lot of guys can bait that in, duck their head, and lead him into big hooks. We've seen him get rocked in a number of fights, and it's something I do worry about, especially against a guy like Peek, who we saw. With Peek, it's not just that first shot you have to worry about, that one knockout shot. If he hurts you, he is an absolute avalanche after that one big shot, and if Mariscal does see himself get rocked up against the cage because he is trying to move backwards, or he is trying to just recklessly move forwards, landing that right hand, he could walk into a massive power shot, and any variety of power shot from a guy like Trevor Peek.
And we've seen Mariscal in the career of one Carlos Hernandez, who looked great last weekend, kind of weave and intertwine, because for Mariscal, 2014 IMMAF gold medalist at the World Championships in the lightweight division. You also had Carlos Hernandez winning a belt there. You also had one Shorty Torres, and Amanda Hebos, all of
A lot
them
of recognizable
successful
names.
at the 2014 IMMAF World Championships. But for Mariscal becoming a pro, you go down through it. And again, as I said, he's taken on a very, very high-level competition. Maybe he hasn't beaten everybody, but he loses to Gregor Gillespie. He loses to Bryce Mitchell. He fought Carl Deaton, who's now in the UFC. He beat Pat Sabatini. He beat Yusuf Zalal. But then he has losses to Brito, Garcia, and Sean Soriano. If you go back and you watch these fights from Mariscal, his last time out, main event's LFA 153. That was his third LFA main event. In that one, misses weight at featherweight. That's why you see 150 pounds there. But in that one, his opponent beats him up in the first round, and then he rallies in the second round and ends up getting the win. If you watch him fighting Jordan Beltran over with Combate, he gets the win there. Beltran's record a little bit suspect. He beats Luke Faltersack over with Cage Warriors at Cage Warriors 133. They've had some California cards. That was one of those American cards. And in that one, Faltersack lands some good shots, but you end up having Mariscal getting the win. If you watch Mariscal's fight against Sean Soriano and the fight against Faltersack and the fight against Joanderson Brito, I think if you consider it for Mariscal, he's got a magnet in his cup for nut shots.
It must be terrible.
Because in the fight against Sean Soriano, he gets kicked in the twice in the first round. Soriano loses a point. But the biggest problem I have is a red flag in that CFFC fight against Soriano. What does Soriano excel at? The wrestling. What's Sean Soriano not good at? Wrestling. He's a good striker. So Mariscal had some success in the striking. Soriano took over in the grappling. And by the end of it, round 2, round 3, Mariscal was really shooting for some takedowns that were defended by Soriano, who ended up getting on top. He loses to Steve Garcia again in an LFA main event. Mariscal's been a springboard for a lot of fighters that you know, but again, he's picked up some really good wins in the past, training out of Elevation with Tatsuro Taira in this one, as well as Justin Gaethje and some other big fighters. For Trevor Peek, a Goji Combatives, a seminar with Britton Hart recently. That's a feeling, man.
A feeling, and all of you guys are gonna feel it.
That's a feeling. So if you do consider this matchup, I think it'll be a lot of fun. The one big-time headliner that I got out of that John Eric Poli interview that Trevor Peek did here in the last couple of weeks, he said, John Eric said, how's your camp been so far and how are you feeling? And Trevor said, I'm tired. He laughs. I've got 2 black eyes. Whole body's bruised up and scratched up. Man, I put myself through a heck of a training camp and I'm ready to start tapering down and letting my body, regroup and everything. But as far as camp goes, man, it's been solid. So Trevor Peek
sounds like he's been putting the work in.
Putting the body through the ringer. But again, it should be a big time matchup for these two guys. And I think, again, they match up really well. Obviously, Mariscal on the 10 days notice, up a weight class. You consider the odds in this one. Peek is favored. We have a Tapology vote. Look at the Tapology votes, see what the fans are thinking. Matt, I'm going to set the over-under at 70% Peek. What do you say?
I'll say under.
You're going to say under?
Way over.
306 total votes, 92% Peek, 88% by knockout. For the 8% that have Mariscal, 50% by knockout, 42% by decision. I don't think a lot of people watch tape on this fight. What do you say for picking this one?
I think Mariscal has a good chance to win this fight, and I think this is a good debut for him. Some guys get their debut against, the 5th-ranked fighter on a week's notice, and guess what? They're probably not going to win that fight. But this fight against Peek, if he can make it uncomfortable and really implement his wrestling, I do think he can have some success with his offensive shots if he's able to make Peek uncomfortable on the feet. But I do have Trevor Peek in the end. I just think Mariscal leaves some openings while he goes for some of his strikes, and I think Peek's going to be able to make him pay for them, even though Peek is not a guy like Yair Rodrigues. You watch his strikes and it's just picture perfect. Peek is also going to leave some openings, so you can come at me in the comment section for that. I just think Peek's going to be able to make Mariscal pay a little bit
Mariscal holds his hands low at the start of the fight. By round 2, round 3, even round 2, they're waist height. He gets hit by right hands. He will blitz like Dricus Duplessis, and there's a lot on it. There really is. The blitzes are good. Mariscal's base is in wrestling and in judo, and if you watch that Soriano fight, his walkout is 2011's biggest banger of all time by will.i.am. THE. You can go hard or you can go home. What a walkout for Mariscal. I think Mariscal gets it done with his wrestling. I've seen Peek show his susceptibility to struggling with the wrestling on the regional scene. We saw it against Malik Lewis. We saw it against Eric Gonzalez. Nobody's been able to make him pay. And Mariscal is going to be tricky because he might have a reach advantage if you go by kind of those LFA numbers that I have on screen. But he is a small guy at featherweight, and he's a pretty darn small guy at lightweight. So we'll see how it plays out. I'm taking a shot at the dark with Chepe Mariscal to get the win. Matt going with the human highlight reel. It is Trevor Peek. Let us know down below in the comment section who you have. Some big time fights on this card. You are not going to want to miss them. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.